Yeah, baby. Yeah. The Mac is back with another video. Hello, the initiated. My name is Marcus Junikala, and today we're checking out OBSO. I love the name. Reminds me of like some kind of a 90s children's or kids movie character, you know? OBSO. Come here, OBSO. The old wizard OBSO. And OBSO is by Circle's Cynths. Now, what the heck is that? Some of you might have seen some demos on this channel regarding the Circle's drum samples libraries. And indeed, this is a new endeavor from that company. I don't actually know if this is a new company or if it's just a part of Circle's drum samples. Don't know what the structure there is, but let's go to the website to have a look at this. I know that this is still work in progress because this hasn't been released yet. Might be out this week when I'm filming or next week. I don't really know. So the website might also be work in progress. But yeah, indeed, at least this is called, this is under the Circle's Cynths. Why is it with C? That's actually interesting. I hadn't noticed that. I hadn't noticed that before this. I can't believe it. I've actually laid my eyes on it a few times now, and I didn't see that it's with a C. This would be problematic if it was followed by a U, but luckily it's not. Circle Cynths. Cool. Nice graphic there. Big text OBSO. Makes you want to buy it, doesn't it? The instrument born from Obsolete tech. So that's cool. Let's read on to learn a bit more. Seems like it's a pretty like minimal, type of page. You can listen to it. So there are 120 patches, presets, some audio examples, which I'm not going to spoil for myself because I don't want to spoil it for myself. Deceptively simple interface. Sculpt your sound with an intuitive interface, complete with sound design effects, attack, release mode, and filter knobs. So it seems pretty simple in that way. I don't know if it's deceptively simple. Have I been deceived? I don't know. Presets and tags. There is like a, what do you call this? Browser window within the instrument. Helps you find stuff. 120 unique patches, like we said, bells, brass, strings, keys, pads, and more. So this isn't like just doing one instrument. It's a selection of different things that pool under a certain obsolete style, I guess. There's a walkthrough video, which I did watch just to kind of educate myself on a basic level, but I did skip audio examples as much as I could, just so I can experience this for myself. But yeah, pretty basic stuff, worth watching still. Some trailer videos here, and then we got some audio demos with, I'm guessing these are Circle's drum samples with the synths. I can't believe I didn't see that it's written with a C. But there you go. Made for contact player, NKS compatibility, I guess that means. Cool, and that's it. So this doesn't actually teach us much about the background of it, other than the obsolete tech. So in the basic, assessing the basic principle of this, I'm very interested and in when it comes to talking about anything sort of broken or old or lo-fi or even saying like obsolete technology. I don't know what that practically will look like or sound like, more importantly. But in concept, I'm very interested because I love taking stuff that a lot of people have considered to be redundant or broken or, yeah, kind of outcasty in some way, I love all kinds of simple electronics and stuff like that. Not sure how how far this takes it. I would love to see a bit more regarding what that actually means. And like I said, this is a pre-release website, so things might be different, but a bit more sort of background about the philosophy and what the obsolete part actually refers to, whether that's the instruments themselves or the recording technology used to capture those things. But cool, that's what we have from the website now. Let's go back to this view. Let's touch on transparency because things are slightly different this time. Well, first and foremost, obviously, Circle Cynths did send me this copy, so thank you to them for doing so. Secondarily, Stefan, who is the founder of Circle's drum samples, is my friend, so you should know that before we get into this. And thirdly, I'm also being compensated for my time in terms of filming and editing this video. Editing is really the most time-consuming part of this. So you should know those things before we get in here, because I want to have full transparency with you. All those things being said, as always, all opinions are my own, both in good and bad. I haven't been asked to say anything one way or the other, nor would I ever do that. It's super important for me to, first of all, only demo stuff that I'm genuinely interested in. So that has to be the number one thing, because otherwise I'm just not going to be interested, and then the demo is going to be shit because I can't fake interest. And secondarily, if I can't be honest and authentic and transparent about doing this, then I have actually zero interest in doing so, because I don't want to lie. Most importantly, not to myself. I don't want to lie to you either, but my relationship with myself means the most to me. In terms of the agenda for this video is to play as much of OBSO as possible. So I'll try and actually play all of the presets. And if we're going to do any tweaking, although the controls sort of seem pretty minimal, if we're going to do tweaking, it's because I want to do that for that sound, but otherwise that's the main goal here is to just give you an idea of what this sounds like coming out of the box and what kind of sounds this offers. In terms of what you'll be hearing today, it's only OBSO in action. I don't add any effects, no delay, reverb, EQ, compression, nothing. I only have a limiter on my master bus to make the level more consistent for this video for your listening experience. But it's set to be as transparent as possible, so there should be minimal, if any, coloration of the sound. If you hear any clipping every once in a while, it's probably because our current limiter settings are not compatible with the levels that the preset in question is producing. So bear with me as I tweak it, and I'll probably let you know if the clipping is the limiter, and I'll certainly always let you know if it's the library that's clipping, although that seems to be quite unlikely. Let's go in here and actually have a look at this library. So initial impressions in terms of the interface, it is very, very simple and minimalistic. I personally do not tend to be a huge fan of these sort of more abstracted interface designs. One of the plugins that comes to mind is, what is it called? Kush Audio's Pusher, which is a good plugin. It's a bit difficult to wrap your head around it, but sometimes it does really super nice stuff to your sound. So I like it a lot, but it's really a pain to use because it's so obscure looking. Now, OBSO looks a lot simpler and better. This isn't difficult to follow at all, but just a personal preference of mine. I don't tend to prefer sort of more abstracted, I was going to say artsy interfaces, but this isn't trying to be like too artsy in any way. But the positive thing is that it's super easy to just see things. So even though they've gone with this approach, perfectly easy to track. This is just a personal like visual preference of mine. What I do like though is that this is kind of like, it has an interesting like 90s type of look. Kind of reminds me of some maybe like McDonald's toys or some toys. I don't know what it's like bringing up to my mind, but some kind of 90s toy, maybe clothing stylistic thing. So they really, if that's what they wanted to go for, the whole design and the color scape there really conveys that nicely. And also when you move some of these things around, you can see the text change, you can see the interface. Actually, you get a bit of like, I guess that's VHS, type of, what would you call that? Distortion happening. So that's pretty cool. Looking at the controls, again, attack, very simple. Release, again, simple, controls how long the release is after you release the note. And of course, attack controls how quickly the note lights up as you press it on the keyboard. Then there is kind of this kind of a master effects thing that things seem to be baked in here, which I would guess then means that the effects are maybe baked into the samples, possibly, not necessarily, but there's no under the hood thing as far as I can tell where you can go tweak those. So it's kind of like take it or leave it, and you can do more of it or you could do less of it. And also filter, which same thing, obviously filter, pretty self-explanatory. Mod, I don't actually know specifically what it does. One of the things about this interface that I think is a bit troublesome is when I grab, let's say, this ball here, if I click it and drag up and down, it goes back and forth. Easy enough. But if you are moderately autistic like I am, you might want to move it from left to right. And obviously, as you can see here, that is not something it registers, and for understandable reasons, because it needs to, it has an axis of movement that defines where the knob is. But if I'm dragging this like a proper artist, then I would assume that I could sort of drag it in the direction where the circle is rotating. And in certain places, like on the left here, it works because I'm still going up and down, but it's only registering up and down. It doesn't register sideways movement. So that could be bothersome to some people. Again, super simple enough to fix. You go up or down, but it might be something. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it might be something that bothers some people. So maybe something they could, have a look at or wonder or ponder. Also, some of the ranges here, obviously, it's visually communicated to you that these balls don't go on top of other balls. Never put balls on balls. That's the main lesson we have today here. But it can be difficult to track the range. For example, for the release here, I understand that it doesn't go higher than this, so it doesn't cross the attack ball. But if you go low here, obviously it doesn't want to cross the effects ball either, but it's kind of like, obviously there's nothing on the red here. So it's sort of visually not necessarily cues the right thing for me, at least. And also it can be sort of, the range here for the effects seems kind of very narrow. Obviously, as you move it, the relative scale is going to be the same as it would be for the release. The distance is just bigger. But it's just slight things that might bother some people when they're using this. Because when you go with this kind of an interface design, that's kind of like one of those trade-offs that you need to trade-off decisions that you need to make. Like, do I want the visual style to be a certain way over some of the functionalities here? And I know, again, a lot of people are going to think highly differently about this. Some like it, some don't. But I just thought it's worth sharing in case you think a certain way, and that's going to be a deciding factor for you. And also in case this helps maybe design this in a different way in the future or improve something. Cool. So as you can see in the interface, not much more than that to have a look at. When you click here, this opens. So when you click on these, on the preset title on the top left, opens up this browser. Now in the left, you have all the presets just on their own, but then you can also go by category, which there are some interesting ones here: comedy, drama, fantasy, mystery, sci-fi. So that's definitely something I'm interested in. And then you can obviously favorite stuff as well. This clear button is a bit, because it obviously means as I choose multiple different categories, it clears those. I would probably change the placement, because when you go here, you would expect to close the window, the browser window. Even if I see that it says clear, intuitively I'm thinking, oh, I want to close the browser. And then you click and it only clears this. The only way to actually get away from the browser is the arrow on the top left. So again, maybe I would have a look at that as well from a user interface standpoint. But cool. That's pretty much it. Pretty much it, not pretty much shit. But yeah, I do like this categorization thing very much, because it does actually help, provided that they are categorized in a proper way. And that can be super difficult, because some sounds I might say, okay, this is a fantasy sound. And you might say, oh, this is clearly a sci-fi sound. So categorization, there's a degree of subjectivity to that. But in principle, I really love browsers that can narrow down what you're looking at. I think we might have actually time to have a play at each and every single one of these presets, because 120 isn't so bad. That's one of the things that relates to this categorization system, because I could say, okay, sci-fi and action. And as you can see, nothing falls under that. So, which is understandable, because 120 presets isn't such a big pool of presets that it would necessarily have anything that falls under those categories. And also, I would probably have a look at how these splits actually work, because if they realize, okay, sounds are never going to have more than 2 tags, then it should prevent you from selecting more than that. But if I select, I can apparently select all of these, which is probably kind of redundancy in the system. So maybe something to look at. It might seem like an unnecessary thing to look at, but might be actually worthy to have a look at in terms of the user experience. So it makes me think that maybe there should be more presets from the perspective of getting the most out of this category system, which is in principle fantastic. Cool. So you can also, obviously, in this drop-down menu in Contact, also select these sounds, which is definitely interesting. I think what we're going to do is use the browser. Let's see if sound strings coming. Yep. So let's do it that way. This way we get to test this part of the browser experience as well. But let's start playing. This one is called, okay, so interesting. just checking, just to be sure, that when I choose a preset up from the contact thingy-majingy, it does stay up there, although the preset does. It does change when I choose it in the browser. So, okay, we should be good to go. But maybe something also to look at, that it should change the contact selected preset as well. But this one is called Coming Soon. Let's first bear with me as I get some sort of a decent level going here. So first things first, filter is actually sounding really good. This is, I presume it's using the contact filter. The difference between this and the previous version of contact is really, really stellar on the filter front. Although I don't know if this uses like a proprietary filter, but yeah, so mod wheel seems to map to the filter by default. I want to test the effects a bit. Well, that's actually really good. The releases work super nicely. So a lot of interesting things here. Going from mono to obviously a wider image, and then we get some like VHS distortion there. That's really cool. I especially think they nailed that VHS distortion and crackling, because that's a really difficult thing to do, because it very often gets too prickly and too harsh, and then it begins to pop at your ears, and it's very difficult to make it subtle enough but pleasant enough to induce that vibe. I really actually love how these effects are done here. I wish there was an easy, quick way on the interface to map the effects to the mod wheel. Obviously, I can do that in other ways as well, but that would be a nice thing to have on the interface as well. Very cool. I dig that. I also tend, like my experience with these type of sounds tend to be that they're not moving enough, they're not shifting enough, and they sort of become very stale and static. Because a part of this kind of old vintage of a certain era at least sound is that the sounds are kind of like very simple, because they've been, maybe sampled strings in a kind of older sampler instrument or something like that. And oftentimes a lot of the magic comes from, again, the what's the word? The defect aspects of the instruments, or the lo-fi aspects of what the instruments actually produce. So when they're done in a modern context, oftentimes a lot of elements are lost or not introduced at all. So you don't have enough like weird modulation thing happening, weird distortion happening. All kinds of things are lost. And then those libraries sort of tend to fall flat from actually giving you that kind of a nostalgic vintage vibe. So they really, really nailed that here. I want to try what the mod thing actually does. Yes, definitely some sort of mild chorusing here. Very tasteful, super, super tastefully done. It's not super obvious. So this strikes me as something that's like, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like boutique. Obviously, this doesn't allow you to go under the hood and tweak the parameters that these things consist of, but they are very curated. That's the word that I'm looking for. Curated selection of changes that are imparted on the sound, and they don't want you to go beyond that, because that's the extent of the vision. Like, this is what it's supposed to sound like, and use it or don't. So yeah, very cool. Also, what I wanted to mention here is that the low end here works remarkably well, because oftentimes with these kind of things, it gets mushy, but this sort of thins out the lower you go, which kind of opens up your ability to actually detect the harmony there, or the individual notes. Cool. So next up, sad strings. Okay, here, yeah, the modulation is done to a more drastic direction, but it's still not drastic. Like, I would call this quite wobbly lo-fi sound, but not extreme yet. Let me push this effect here a bit. Yeah, so this effect knob down seems to introduce a sort of a mono-ish sound, and then it widens up as you open it up. Super nice. Again, love this modulation here. Very tastefully done. Nice. Morgan. Okay, here, this is a good example of how easily a sound like this could become very block-like and stale. Because again, it's modeling or sampling a instrument that tends to sound quite blockish and unchanging. But here, there's so many qualities, like the noises, the slight distortion, the modulation, that makes this sound alive. Because things like mellotrons or old like electric organs or anything like that, in a modern context, when they're sampled and you don't include all that grit and grime that the recording technologies imbue into those sounds, then they're just going to sound super sterile and uninspiring. But this, again, the softness of this edge makes this immediately actually inspiring to play, instead of being like, oh, that's just a blocky sound. Let me pull up the modulation here, and I'm actually going to max out the effects as well. Okay, so a bit of reverb comes in. I think I prefer this drier sound. Okay, here again, the mono-ness of it gets a bit too claustrophobic. Cool. Creature feature. That's really cool. That's actually very, very cinematic. Obviously has that kind of 80s edge to it. Thinking, is it 80s or maybe early 90s as well? But beautiful. First I was thinking the low end is like where I want to be, but this actually sounds really, really inviting and really nice to listen to. Again, with these kind of instruments, it tends to be the case that the top end becomes too bright, too harsh, sort of brittle. But this has the edges are sort of very softened. That is actually really nice to listen to. Something interesting happening in the low end. I don't know what causes that kind of occasional accumulation of the low end energy. Because I can hear there's like a, yeah, there it is. Like a, not lower octave, but maybe like 2 octaves down, like a sub octave there, that comes in and creates this beautiful low rumble cinematic. I'm wondering how I could control that, because sometimes I don't want it to, when you change chords, it kind of continues to accumulate, but maybe that's like a note triggering issue. But really cool sound. I did not expect to hear that in there, but happy it is. Vice Vidi. Oh yeah, I dig this. They really nailed the effect here, because this really makes the difference. Again, a sound like this can be so like stale and soulless, and it's missing that nostalgic juice and that kind of grit and the vintageness of it that we seek. So this is really cool to witness that here. Let me try and find some kind of a decent level here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, take some of that edge off. Let's go full mod, because I just want to hear this in a sort of more extreme end, especially when this is a curated library in terms of the extent or the spectrum of its expression, I guess. That's not a great sentence, but let's go with that. This also seems to also have some pretty cool overlaps with some earlier maybe SNES type or era, sort of like early sampling in game consoles as well. Obviously, this is leaning more heavily into the kind of 80s VHS distortion, stuff like that. But it could be a nice sort of a extension of that realm as well. In the Mirror. Sorry about that. It can be pretty difficult, especially with a lot of bell sounds, to get the level in the right place. Yeah, definitely I could see this also as a good additional tool for like SNES type of things, because it kind of, unless you want to just like do like just like pure SNES type of stuff, but good to have a bit of like that, like those VHS type of characters for a lot of those sounds as well, because again, it softens the edge of those otherwise quite crude sounds. But next one, Therobox. Okay, that's funny, because the mod introduces like this all over the place. This is actually a really good sound, like theremin type of sound. I haven't played, I don't think, any good theremin sounding instruments or libraries. I'm sure it has been done. I just haven't laid my hands on that. But this actually conveys that style. And additionally, this conveys that kind of more old school version of it, like looking at an older video of the theremin being played. Because again, listen to the noise here. It's really, really tastefully done. They really nailed, again, the effects portion of this sound. Yeah, distortion really nice, because it's reminiscent, or not even reminiscent. It nails that kind of old video recording type of thing. Also, what I really like here is that when I do the bigger shifts, you hear that glide clearly, but when I move in notes that are closer to one another and faster, you hear this very nice, pleasant, smooth switching behind it. It sounds super, super nice, and it's really nice to play. So they really nailed the transitions from notes to one another. Also reminds me of some like old Nintendo type of sounds that are really cool. VHS Wine. sort of more ghostly type of stuff. Hallowed Bell. Really cool. So first of all, I like the cinematicness of it. Makes this quite broadens the usability of this library a lot. Very kind of cinematic, low end type stuff. The impact here and the imaging for this, especially the higher you get, is really, really impressive. Like it hits super nicely, smooth, kind of the low end of it, and then you have this transient element that is perfectly kind of rounded, not harsh at all. This hits really, really perfectly. Yeah, that's really, really nicely balanced. Let me push that effect a bit. Yeah. Low chroma. Cool. Forehead hit. Yeah, it reminds me of some old video games. Very cool to have something like that in the toolkit, especially to this level of detail in terms of the effect processing here. we go. Found the Bach in there. Really cool. Damaged strings. Cool. It's kind of like bread and butter for that style. Cool. So I have some kind of pre-harmonized stuff there that can also be useful, especially in this style. Yeah, so a lot of these are going to be super useful in that kind of 90s nostalgia for sure. And 80s as well. It kind of depends on the specific years. Again, a great example of something that could so easily be stale, but just the way the noise, the distortion, the effects sort of marinate into the sound really makes a massive difference. Really liking this. Yeah, personally, I'm seeing a big use case for kind of retro video gaming sounds as well, but with that kind of added 90s twist to it. Yeah, so some pre-baked harmony there. Again, goes well with the era sounds for sure. So super interesting. This is like taking on some of the things that I talk about when you bump into a sound or a preset or an instrument that kind of it sounds like its own instrument. It wants to do its own thing. And obviously here there's that phasing happening, which is kind of twisting your perception of the pitch a bit. But there's something else as well, which is clearly shifting the tonal substance here. Which is really actually cool and inspiring to me. This is, I'd be very interested in seeing what's actually causing it. Yeah, I think it's just the phaser is cycling in and out, and that's obviously changing your perception of that. Now that I listen to it with that in mind, it's clearly doing that. Also love how some of that shifting affects the resonance of some of the notes, which creates really cool things sort of popping in and out. What's quite remarkable about it is that it's not it doesn't get overbearing, because these kind of things can easily just, the volume differences can be, tens of decibels, and then it's all over the place. So this keeps itself together super nicely without losing the edge of, because the beauty of those resonances is that they are a difference to the bass line, or the main part of the sound. So they kind of pop in and out, and that's what's interesting and fascinating about them. But balancing it out can be difficult. So yeah, this is really cool. One of my favorites for sure. Octano. Cool. So again, era truthful, very much used in that time. SLP choir, is this like sleep choir? Yeah, very cool. Simple tweaking of the controls, really opens up. A lot of these kind of like very pad-like things benefit tremendously from very simple attack and release manipulation. That clipped in the limiter because that was rather loud. Oh, I had my mic on. Well, yeah, really cool. Again, that kind of, for me, leans to that stuff that I would use for video game music in a certain style. Very cool. Can't really catch what I'm after there, but this would be beautiful for a lo-fi type of a thing. In fact, I'll probably be using that for that. My microphone doesn't seem to be complying with me. One of the things I wanted to say about late returns is that there's a really cool element here when I hold the chord. Sounds like there's like an additional sort of more modern synth coming in from there, but it doesn't come in. Let me check that it's... Yeah, just wanted to check one thing. But yeah, it's sort of like, sort of lurking in the back, which beautifully brings the sound forward and kind of, what's the word? Modernizes it a bit, but it doesn't come all the way up. It's sort of in the back there, which again, like, modernizes the sound, brings it to the back. I just wanted to touch on that because I forgot to say, but that's a beautiful balance with the kind of old, more sort of old sampling VHS distortion noise thing. Really nicely sort of creates a pleasant contrast there. This C-star thing is really cool as well. I haven't quite figured out how this works, but let's play a bit more. It sounds like there's a fifth in there, but very, very pleasantly subtle, because the dominant tonality is there based on what you play, but there's a hint of that weirdness in there depending on what you're playing, but creates this otherworldly feeling to it. And again, beautifully, the effects are really, really beautifully done, really tastefully done. Autor Ewind. Really cool sound. Loving that as well. Quartet. So you can do that kind of stuff as well. Harmotron. Really cool. Really loving this. I mean, again, just on its own, this kind of sine wavy or maybe triangle type of thing flows so nicely. The effects on it are beautiful, but all the particles, the distortion, the weirdness that comes, all that kind of digital but analogized. Super very, very nice stuff. Beta strings. Yeah, there's just so many of these pad type things that are really good for this era of sound. Yeah, that hits really nicely. That sounds really good. Yeah, another hit, Shania. So this. I want to use more as a short sound. Or maybe not. Love the textures there. I would need to work on the ADSR portion of that. Yeah, you could do some cool hip-hop stuff with that. Yeah, again, simple attack and release tweaks can really open up those sounds in a different way. Very cool. I can actually imagine this is like really cool for hip hop stuff as well. Especially if they use that any kind of a sort of lo-fi edge, which a lot of hip hop uses, even if it's not intended to sound like very lo-fi, but yeah, a lot of fun sounds from the era. Limiter clipping, some of these are a lot louder. Really cool to hear that low buzzing there. It's really kind of ballsy they included that in there. Very cool. Beautiful sequence. I wish I could get my hands in there to play my own stuff in there, but hey, a beautiful sound. Okay, so that's directly referencing a lot more of the video game stuff. I can see how these really pair well with the circles drum sample stuff. Because, yeah, you could do a lot of like pretty cool hip hop lo-fi stuff with this. Yeah, a lot of nostalgia there. Hush Quartet. super cool. Love this kind of broken lo-fi stuff. Super cool. Plucky, short stuff. Lo-fi. Love it. Clipping. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff that is wonky to begin with. Then you begin to lengthen the notes a bit, put the right effects on it. You're still tonal, but it's kind of weird and wonky in many ways. Love it. Love it. Beautiful, beautiful lo-fi pad. Really, really cool. I actually didn't check how do you favorite stuff? Do you have to go like, oh, there are stars next to the names there. Okay. There we go. I should have done this from the get-go. But it's too late now, mate. It's too late. bit of a misplay there. Would be nice to have the option to favorite stuff in this view as well, so I don't have to be in this window all the time. That would be convenient. Yeah, a lot of these are sort of very subtle, but just brilliantly balanced. They're kind of difficult to demonstrate them without putting them in a musical context, at least for me, but hopefully I can get something across here. So this has got to be probably the best lo-fi, one of the best lo-fi pianos I've heard in this style, because this is like a very particular style of sampling. And oftentimes these end up, they might sound good individually as a note, but then when you put them in a context of a playable instrument, they kind of fall apart. So then you have to be really weird in how you arrange your piano parts and how you use the notes, but none of that stuff here. This remains perfectly playable, and it still evokes the lo-fi piano samplingness of it, but it still kind of plays like a piano. This is really difficult to do in my estimation, at least in terms of testing hundreds of sample libraries. Because I can still play it, because what happens with most of pianos that try and do this, they're not playable. The voices begin to stack in a weird way and they just don't jive together with one another. But here, how it pairs with everything is really, really, really brilliant. And you can play it like a piano, you can play it like a piano part, but it still gives off this lo-fi vibe. really cool. This has got to be one of my favorites in here. Really, really cool. I've been really looking for something like this that does this sound and, does it so well. But again, the noise here, perfect. The slight VHS type of distortion there, really cool. Oh crap! Let's try and find where we were. There we go. Yeah, another one. These lo-fi pianos are, super, super, super cool to me. They nail that sound so well. Really cool rattling edge on there. I imagine someone could do something really cool, kind of hip hop stylish with that. Find a good, funny loop for that. It's actually really effective. Pretty good. Good Brahm. Yeah, you can do some really cool stuff with that if you figure out the part. I wonder if this is a reference to the guitar pedal generation loss. Yeah, the soft edge there is really good. A lot of these sounds do require, at least to my taste, to the type of music that I want to make or would make with these kind of sounds. I would always tweak the attack and release quite a lot because I wouldn't use them in very sort of pad-like manners necessarily. Okay, this seems quite interesting. That's really cool. Doesn't sound at all like a hurdy-gurdy, but I'm guessing it's some kind of hurdy-gurdy sample from a long time ago. I do wish this had a full ADSR control, because then I wouldn't be, because with the release only, I kind of had to find a good release time and then just play shorter notes. I will say also some of the ranges here are a bit short. I would love them to extend at least an octave upwards. Where are we going right now? Okay, about there. Yeah, some of these hits have crazy impact, so really good processing on the effect front. Yeah, so a lot of these kind of more maybe pad leaning things, I would sort of actually turn into short notes and do like lo-fi video game type of stuff with them personally. That's really cool. Very cinematic, dark, gritty. Again, perfectly sounds big and ominous and noisy and gritty, but it's beautifully balanced. It doesn't take up too much space. That's really good. Oh. Loving that. Completely broken and messed up. I imagine so many of these would be really good for hip hop. Yeah, I repeat myself, but hip hop. Yeah, again, pianos are super solid. Very juicy. Yeah, this definitely... the video game thing is not just in my head, I don't think. Sounds super good. Very cool. Smog, I guess. Yeah, like opening it up a bit, making the releases longer, makes it more like a playable, airy, petty, dreamy kind of thing. Sorry about that. Sometimes when you change the preset, it just craps the hell out. And that's Contact in general. I should know better. Really good sounding bass there. Limiter clipping. Cool. Cool. I think that's it. I think we played all of the presets. So, okay, so much to cover here. First of all, this ended up being far more versatile than I expected, because this covers a lot of different ground. First of all, you get a lot of that 90s nostalgia vibe, a lot of like VHS, uh, chorusing or modulation and distortion and the noise. So that's definitely like a continuous theme here. My biggest things here that I like the most are for sure the things that lean more into the lo-fi category, because that's the type of music that I'm most interested in writing with a tool like this. So obviously I'm biased in that way, but a lot of beautiful lo-fi things, like some of the best like lo-fi. So there's a lot of sub-categorization going on here, but a certain type of like sampled piano stuff, really, really great in the lo-fi category when it comes to that. A lot of these sounds, with a simple attack and release tweak, you can turn any of the pads into like a really cool, playable, dreamy, kind of short note, not necessarily plucky, but shorter note, dreamy kind of key type of thing. So I really like that. Works really well for the type of lo-fi stuff that I want to write. There's a bunch of these kind of like very era specific and era appropriate, one hits that you would hear on, video games or even some movie soundtracks. So it covers that basis a lot as well. I can imagine that a lot of hip hop producers or beat makers, whatever you want to call yourself, would be a big mistake to sleep on this, because I think there's a lot of really cool, slightly weird, broken sounds that would pair really, really well with kind of the modern hip hop sound. So, have maybe some, fresher drum beats and then have this kind of broken kind of stuff mixed in there would be really, really cool. So I think for hip hop, this shouldn't be slept on for sure. What else do I want to touch on there? I think that sort of covers the general stuff there. A lot of these sounds, to my taste, are something that, for the type of music I want to do, require a bit of attack and release tweaking, because a lot of these sounds are made in not necessarily with a pad type of sound in mind, but they're certainly sampled in that way, because they sample these longer notes and they are typically used in a pad fashion. But don't be shy to, tweak these out a bit to shape the sound for something else, because even such a simple thing as attack release tweaking will drastically change the style of sound. That being said, I would love to have an actual ADSR option here as well. Attack, release, sustain, and decay also in there as well. But that would make it easier, because this way, if I want to do what I'm sort of after, I would need to set the release to kind of simulate the note length that I want to use and then play shorter notes physically here. So that would definitely be a useful thing. One of the things I want to say about the interface here is that this ended up, while we started by me saying that I'm not a huge fan of sort of more abstracted, stylized, perhaps artsy interfaces in terms of like using them in music making. I will say this was remarkably easy to follow. Not once did I, obviously there are only 5 blobs, or circles, so shouldn't take that much brain power. But not once did I actually stop to search for where things are. So it did end up working very intuitively. I don't think it sort of added anything to my personal sort of workflow inspiration wise. I think what does slightly is the visual changes here that you can see when you tweak things. It's kind of like, it's really good looking. I don't know if it sort of maps to what I would expect immediately when I'm tweaking things, but it's cool. I would say it did affect my maybe inspired state a bit, but I will say the interface ended up working far better than what I expected my connection to it would be. So pretty cool in that regard. An ability to favorite the preset here when it's selected in this performance or tweaking window, whatever this is, would be nice. So I don't have to be in here to favorite stuff. That would be very nice. Anything else we want to touch on here? Oh yeah, I did also, there were a few sort of clearly more cinematic sounds. So sort of like darker cinematic things. They also did have that kind of lo-fi broken tone to them, but they were a lot, like I would say stylistically dominantly in terms of what they evoke, like dark cinematic stuff. And I love that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to see that as an inclusion as well. And also, most of the hits in here have beautiful imaging. So they hit really nicely. They sit in a really nice pocket. They're EQ'd super nicely. So you get the heft of a hit. But then also the imaging is really, really well done. So they really, hit you super nice coming out of the speakers. Trying to look through the presets here in case there's something that reminds me of something I'm missing here. But I don't think so. Yeah, for me personally, I mean, I was super surprised by how comprehensive this is as an offering in terms of how many different genres it can serve. Because this is really, really has its hand in that lo-fi and that hip-hop and that cinematic and then that kind of 90s era as well, if you want to do specifically something in that style without just having like a lo-fi nostalgic vibe. So it does a lot of stuff. I would love to see even more presets, especially with this categorization system. Like we said, it can be kind of easy to find yourself in combinations where you don't have anything. Not that that necessarily needs to be the case, but yeah, 120 presets it's a good amount. But especially for a library where you can't do a lot of tweakaroonie, because this is like a curate. These are curated sounds clearly, so they are sculpted from beginning till end, and everything from the kind of minimal settings to the maximal settings are curated and sculpted. So especially for a library that has limited tweakability in that sense, I would love to see more presets, especially since they are so good. And I would just love to see more content there as well. What else did I want to see? I had some kind of a point I wanted to touch on here. But yeah, personally, very, very, So yeah, I wanted to touch on how they are going to communicate what this does or what it is, because again, when we go to the website, again, this is probably maybe in a pre-launch state. So I would love them to convey more clarity on what this means, the obsolete tech. So give an idea of what the instruments are and what kind of stuff they're going through, because clearly these are, mangled and distorted and bent into a certain form through some processing. So more information on that, I think, would be super helpful for those who are interested, but also those who are looking to buy this, because then you would understand what this is. And I'm especially bullish on that because I don't want people to miss out on what this does have to offer, because this is a very unique offering. I can't really recall anything that specifically goes to this kind of a niche in that stylized 90s sort of VHS broken type of thing. And then, I mean, that alone, period, but let alone going to these different genres. So it's a really cool offering. So I would love more information here. Maybe it's going to be here on release day. Maybe it's not, but that would be super useful, because then I understand, okay, what are the instruments that are in there and how are they treated, and what is the soul essence of this? What is the vibe? What is the thing that this is trying to, crystallize, I guess. But personally, cannot wait to use this for some lo-fi ambitions, lo-fi stuff that I want to work on, at least. I don't know. We'll have to see when I have the time for that, but hopefully sooner than later, because this is going to be a beautiful part of this. And lastly, I want to praise how well the effects are done here, because not once did I think that the noise was off the mark or somehow anything else but like perfectly capturing the thing that it's after. The noise, the distortion, the particles, the artifacts, everything here on that. I think it's probably most of it is done on the effect front. I don't know how much of it is baked into the samples, how much is contact, but they are superbly, really, really well done. So whoever worked on that, you nailed it, because they sound really, really good. Cool. That's it for this video. If you happen to be watching this after already getting this, let me know what you think of this down in the comments. And if you're just watching this, I'd be happy to, as always, hear what you think of this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Finished.